And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon, and today I'm talking with Jeff Amerine. And well, first of all, Jeff, thank you for spending some time with me and being my guest today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Jeff is he's the founder, the leader of Startup Junkie. I love that name, Startup Junkie Consulting, where they work with entrepreneurs, business owners, and they provide, get this, no cost, one-on-one consulting in really just a variety of areas that hit business owners, whether it's funding or talent or marketing or operations or well, you name it, they can really help you. It's fascinating what they're doing. So I'm super excited to dive into this conversation with you, Jeff. And tell me, as we get going, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, this is so Startup Junkie is this sort of accidental business. It wasn't one that was manifest in a business plan or part of a grand strategy, but I, by nature or by affliction, I was a 9-time serial tech founder, right? A lot of different ventures, spent time in 3 Fortune 500s, spent time at the university actually doing tech commercialization and whatnot. And it was clear to me, based on my own entrepreneurial experience, that startups and small business are kind of the backbone of the economy, but the failure rate is also exceedingly high. And so there was a program that was started by the state as part of an offshoot from a Millikan Institute report that said we have to do more with the startup scene. We have to do more with knowledge and technology-based businesses if we want to move up the ladder in terms of the national rankings, and we need more economic vitality. So Innovate Arkansas really kicked off this program by Winrock International and by Arkansas Economic Development Commission back in 2007. And at the time, I thought I'd kind of graduated from the startup scene. I thought I was done with all that. But a guy named Tom Dalton, who was at one point the Little Rock manager and had worked at DHS, he was at Winrock at the time, and he said, we need some operators helping these startups, people that have really been in the trenches, have walked in the same pathway that they're going down, that have operating experience, that have made money, have lost money, all that. And I said, well, I'm full time at the university. There's just, I don't have time really, and I can't leave. I just got here. He said, well, see if you can do it part time. I said, cool. I'll see if I can get it done part time. I had conversations. Everybody thought it would be additive to what I was doing at the university at the time. And so it started as this after hours, at lunch type of thing where I was taking occasional meetings and talking to people. This was in 2008. And about that time, we started to pick up some traction. We began to get more interest in doing things like accelerators, which are kind of like compressed MBAs, where you take 2 years of development of a startup and you jam it into 12 or 14 weeks. We got some federal funding for that. One thing after another. Northwest Arkansas Counsel came to me and said, you may be one of the only people around here, this was 2009 or 10, that understands the space. Can you run more events and activity? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. Well, pretty soon, I had like 14 jobs, right? And I knew that I was going to have to leave the university because this thing was really kind of taking off. And what started out as this sort of ad hoc side hustle for me became a business that employs a bunch of people. We've got a staff of about 30 in multiple locations in Arkansas, in Seoul, South Korea, in Europe. And now, we're all about trying to improve lives through this entrepreneurialism and through making sure they've got the tools and the inspiration to be successful. And as you said, it's this crazy unsustainable business model where everything's free. And yet we're able, based on the outcome data that we collect, to show, hey, this is having big economic impact. So folks like Arkansas Economic Development Commission, the Small Business Administration, the EDA, the Walton Family Foundation, and others fund the activities that we do so that we can provide those services that entrepreneurs and small businesses need. Wow. Long-winded, but there you have it.
Well, no, it's very fascinating because it brings both those worlds together because, everybody talks about Walmart and how big they are and things. They don't understand how much Walmart gives back to the foundations and things.
Sure.
And this is just one more component of that because they're one of the many partners that you have to say, we want to infuse life into small business because they know how hard it is, right?
Right.
And so many times entrepreneurs, we don't get it all because, dude, I've been doing this since 2013. I had an idea. Right. And I had enough passion and enough gumption to go, I'm going to go try to figure this thing out, right? And it's been like a pinball ever since, going ding, 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 ding. where were you 13 years ago, dude? You were around. I just didn't know about you. That's why you're here. And
Right.
I'm so glad you're here. So let's talk about some of those struggles that entrepreneurs face because they're visionaries, but they're not operations people, or they're not
Right.
HR people that hit the wall and keep them from really accelerating to make a bigger impact, and how you can help them.
Yeah, what so it's great. I mean, there's any number of ways you can think of failing. Startups will and entrepreneurs will figure out how to fail, right? But it's difficult. It's difficult. That's why the failure rate is so high. But the number one thing that we try to convince entrepreneurs of is be a consultant to your own idea. In other words, be objective. Try to kill the idea with data, with your customer discovery work, with talking to people, with avoiding confirmation bias, by really being objective. Is, am I solving a problem that someone would pay for, or am I fulfilling an unmet need? And how do I know? What's the evidence? Too often, we'll have entrepreneurs come in and they'll say, well, yeah, I've talked to everybody I know, all my friends and family, and they say this is a great idea, and they buy it, which is actually worth less than zero. It is actually a negative reinforcement because you're not being open-minded about who your ideal customer is and whether or not there's enough of them out there to substantiate a business. And so we try to give them the tools to go find that answer out. Things like the lean canvas process, where you've got, it's essentially a one-page collection of your assumptions about your business, what the problem is, who the customers are, what the solution is, the unique value, what's your unfair advantage you can build a moat around, how are you going to measure progress and key metrics, how are you going to go to market with channels, what's your cost structure, what's your revenue structure. We give them those kind of tools and also some guidance on how to ask really good open-ended questions. So they're not trying to elicit the answers that reinforce what they believe, but they're getting that base demand data that will tell them, hey, there's something here or there isn't. So that's one of the big things is, so 36% of the time, early stage businesses fail because they're solving a problem that no one cares about. They built something that no one wants.
That's so yeah, I laugh only because I've seen it, I've been there, and it's one of those things that you go ask people, do you think this is a great idea? And they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. It's like, would you buy it? Yeah, I'd buy it. Give me the money. And they're like, oh, I gotta go do something else, And
Precisely.
there's that point that's like, well, everybody thinks it's a great idea, but nobody's giving me any money. I got a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And you gotta work through all of that. And so many times, and I love the model that you have because you're funded through foundations and grants and different things. So entrepreneurs can come to you because if you're a small entrepreneur, you're growing a business, you've been there for 6 months or 6 years, you might not have the money to go hire a
Exactly.
consultant. And is how do you even find the right one? Right. And
Right.
so coming to you really lowers that barrier to go, okay, Jeff, what do I need to do? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And to give you kind of the thought on that, in some ways you could look at our business as this sort of marriage of McKinsey Consulting plus an event management company. We see probably 2,000 entrepreneurs a year through one-on-one mentoring sessions. We put on about 250 events. And so when they come to us, we take all comers, right? They get on our website, they make an appointment, they show up. We see everybody from sort of PowerPoint and a prayer or just a concept to people that are already well developed in their process, but maybe they've hit some sticking points or they have questions they can't answer. We try to take a very Socratic process when we do triage. So in other words, it's not a case of me saying, well, I've done 9 startups and I've got 35 years of experience and here's how you have to do it. It's more of asking the questions early on to try to get them to think about the kind of questions they should ask. So it's Socratic in that it's not dictatorial. It's an approach where we'll ask them a bunch of questions. We'll then say, well, these are some observations, and then we'll give them some homework to say, these are some things you probably ought to think about doing. And some people say, well, if you're meeting with 2,000 people a year, how do you manage that kind of flow? Some of them will rally around the homework and they'll really get into it and they'll move the things forward. Some of them will look at that necessary rigor that's required and they'll say, this really isn't for me. I thought it was going to be way easier. I thought I would show up with an idea and people would open their checkbooks. And so that bit of a diplomatic gut check that we give them early on, we never say, we think this is a crappy idea, it's not going to work. It's more of, markets are ruthlessly efficient. Go out and find out for yourself and then come back and let's talk about it. And then the other thing we do, and this is a function of being around for a long time, is inevitably they're going to need some depth of subject matter expertise. Even though we have a great team, we may not have, but we've got this huge network. So we'll refer them to the right kind of attorney, the right kind of accountant, the right kind of digital marketing expert. So we've got a big network of folks that we can access as well.
Yeah. And that's huge, because instead of them chasing everybody and trying to vet everybody and listen to the pitch or the stack deck or whatever to go,
Yep.
I need a trusted voice, a counselor per se, and I love the fact that you do the Socratic method. I was reading a book called that's back here. It's called The Road Less Stupid. Keith Cunningham, he's made and lost more millions than most of us will ever see.
Right.
And he says, asking, finding a good answer is great. Asking the right question is brilliant.
Exactly.
And I think so many times we don't ask the right questions, and we don't want to go through the pain of that. It's like, Jeff, can you just give me the answer, please? But that doesn't help me grow as an entrepreneur, understanding that this problem here, if I solve it, I'm going to have 6 others that are very similar.
Exactly.
And when I learn how to think, the world kind of opens up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's kind of based on the premise that the entrepreneurial path is a path that only the entrepreneur can walk down. Our job is to illuminate it, so they can see where the potholes and the minefields and all that are. But our road is not to walk that path for them. They still have to do the work.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so good. And once you embrace that it is a job. Being an entrepreneur is a job, right? It's one that you should love. And there's the vision, but there are mountains and valleys and bombs and all kinds of things that we have to innovate, and we have to know how to navigate and pull the right people in place. That I can't do this all myself. I've built my business over years by building systems, people, teams, equipping them. Because I learned a long time ago, Jeff, you don't know this about me. I only do 4 things well in life. Okay. And I've learned that, though. So I bring people around me to do all those other things. And it makes it easier for me just to stay focused on what I'm great at. I had a client email me today to ask me about how to order a book. And I'm sure I could figure it out or tell them, but I forwarded it to one of my teammates. I said, will you please give them a better answer than I'm going to give them? They're going to get better customer service. They're going to get the right product at the right time, because I don't do that anymore. I did that 12 years. But entrepreneurs need to understand that we need a team. But how do you build that business? You hook up with somebody like Jeff, who's kind of been around the block a couple times and has this worldwide team. Talk a little bit about the breadth of you've talked about the different size companies. So this could be a startup. It could be an idea. It could be somebody who's been around for a number of years and is just hitting a wall, maybe.
For sure.
But it can also be somebody that's anywhere virtually, right?
Yeah. I mean, it can. And we're funded statewide for Arkansas. We're the new contractor for Arkansas Economic Development Commission for the Innovate Arkansas program. We won that program recently. It was made public. The conductor operates in 13 counties in Central Arkansas. That's us too. Startup Junkie is known well in the Northwest. We have Startup Junkie Asia, which is based in Seoul, South Korea. And it's a mix of programs. So we've got accelerators like the 10X Growth Accelerator that's based out of Conway that runs a couple of times a year. We've got the Fuel AI ML Accelerator. We have a cybersecurity accelerator as well under the Fuel banner, and then Fuel Health Tech. And so there's lots of different touch points where people can engage with us. We get to people through the events. We get to people through inbound inquiries. How we rationalize working with people out of state is if there's something that out of state business can do that would be beneficial to the large flagship enterprises here, we'll take that call. We'll make that connection. We'll provide that advice. We are clearly most concentrated here in Arkansas, but we're connecting all the time to startups that may be in Israel or in Canada or in South Korea, trying to figure out how to convince them that, hey, this is not a bad place to have a beachhead in the North American market. This is the kind of place you should think about, specifically if you've got something that's relevant to retail, supply chain, food and beverage, health,
100%.
fintech related stuff.
Yeah. People overlook Arkansas and they don't understand. I mean, it's a great state for education, for all kinds of resources.
Yep.
And so I love the fact that you're connecting. But the other thing for business owners thinking about growing and hitting challenges and trying to think through it is you have, I don't think you call them partnerships, but you've got networks of people, attorneys and different things of that nature, which is just invaluable.
We do. Yeah, we do. And so talk a little bit more about the team. So the team, our core team, is a mix of serial entrepreneurs, business owners, subject matter experts. So we have people that have great finance backgrounds, people that have worked at Stevens Bank that can go as deep as you want to go on financial model questions, on those sorts of things. We have people that have marketing communications, digital marketing background. But as good as that team is, and we have people that are multilingual. I mean, we run the Kiva Hub program. A lot of that is the Spanish-speaking community within Arkansas. Claudia Scott runs that for us. She's from Costa Rica originally, so we can do outreach to these communities that typically don't have access, because if they're not super conversant in English, they're not going to come see us, or
Right.
there's cultural differences. So that's kind of the core. Now, inevitably, we'll get to a point where there's something that we don't know, or we shouldn't be opining on matters of law
Right.
or the depth of CPA type of accounting. And what we can do is encourage the folks that come to us to say, look, here's a half a dozen firms that we think are solid. You interview them. We're not going to give them a rank order, but we'll say these are 4 or 5 that we know are very savvy, that could be helpful. Interview them, talk to them, find out. Same with banks, same with intellectual property attorneys. If some of that's a function of, we've just been around for a long time now, 15 years, and we've got a lot of good contacts. And that, as much as anything else, aside from the advice and the guidance and asking good questions, that network is powerful. It's a time saver, because we'll keep them from wasting a bunch of time making cold calls to people that are going to be like, who are you and how'd you get my number? And
Right.
what do you want, type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And finding some, all of that for a business owner is huge to save the time. Because if you're
Yep.
like me as an entrepreneur, I mean, I don't want to do all of that. I just want to say,
Yep.
hey, Jeff, give me the top 3 names and now I'll go do it and build the relationship.
Exactly.
That is so much easier than Googling somebody or asking all my buddies, right? And so it's such a great resource that you've developed over time in just a multiplicity of ways. And I think most entrepreneurs, I think this is accurate, underestimate how hard it is to get a business up, going, and successful to hit. I mean, you probably know the stats. How many small business, how long does a first startup last? 2 years?
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
the failure rate within a year is probably 85%.
yeah.
And if you can get them through the first year, which is, these are stats we measure, right? First year survival rate, there's certain economic impacts you can associate with that. If you can get them through the 5th year, there's certain economic impacts you can associate with that. And those are outcomes that we measure.
Yes.
If we can bend that curve down where those first year failures are less, maybe people don't start businesses that wouldn't have made sense based on being rigorous and failing the plan early, right? You think about all that money you say. I can't tell you the number of times we've had people come in and say, spent $200,000 to build an application, a website. And it was like, well, how much marketing, customer discovery work did you do? Well, none, other than talking to friends and family. And I know this space.
Yeah.
And you just can see the impending train wreck in that
Right.
case. So if we can get them to think smarter, to fail fast and iterate at
Yes.
the concept stage, then their success rate is going to improve.
Yeah.
And it's got, all the studies have shown, you get them through the first year, you get them through the 5th year, the overall job creation, the new products created are significantly greater.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is the impact aspect is so many times business owners look at, top line revenue or bottom line profits, and we forget about the teams. You mentioned you have what, 25 or 30 people on your team.
Yeah.
We've got 32. The impact we are making in their lives and their families and their communities, driving, that is so rewarding,
For
right?
sure.
And I think that's probably what you're talking about in measuring to go, I want a business that is legacy for my family. Right? I've got a 200-year vision for my company because I see the impact that it's making today, but I want my grandkids to be in this business if they
Sure.
would so choose. And not everybody has to do that, but you have to think farther than this quarter, and you
Right.
have to think more than top line revenue because that's not the number.
That's right. That's right.
Sorry, you hit a hot button somewhere. We could probably talk for hours because this is the more I talk and the more I think about what you're doing, the more passionate I get about how you can make a huge impact in small businesses, growing businesses to help them not be one of those statistics
Exactly.
and to say, no, we're going to be long term. We're going to be here in 15, 20 years. There are certain there are metrics that you have to look at, but there's a thought process that a business
Sure.
owner really needs to have. And I think that's part of what people are going to get from you because of the Socratic method. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. And we've talked about it a lot and add a little bit of clarity to that. As it relates to team, solo entrepreneurs are not going to accomplish a lot. The team and the culture that you build with that team are the durable things that are going to last and are going to be significant determinants of success. I think it was Drucker that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And the way we think about that today is culture is a big part of strategy. You have to have the right culture, the right set of core values, the right vision, the right purpose or mission. All those things are hugely important. And the leader's job, the entrepreneurial leader's job, is to build that culture that will be durable. A good example right there in Little Rock with you would be what Justin George did with Apogee. That company scaled. It hired a bunch of people. It was in a very difficult sector within the ed tech space, selling into school districts. But the most durable thing he built, other than just being really savvy at sales, was a culture they all believed in. It wasn't just marketing eyewash that was on a poster on the wall. It's how they hired, it's how they fired, it's how they selected their customers. And so I think culture is a big part of it. And that's a lot of times we can get into the mechanics of here's how you build the business.
Yeah.
But the softer side, those interpersonal skills around building the right kind of team, hiring the right kind of people, all that stuff as it relates to building a good culture and a great team, that's really hugely important.
Well, it is. And my favorite example around culture and how it relates to customer acquisition, customer experience is when you walk into an Apple store. I don't have to say a word to anybody, but when I walk in, I understand their culture from the get-go.
Sure.
They've worked long and hard to make that, right? Other businesses have similar, cultures that fit them. We forget about how important culture is because it really is that DNA of the founder many times. And what am I trying to communicate through my team, through my marketing, all of that?
Exactly.
Wow, very cool. Okay, I'm sure this is like intrigued a bunch of people, listeners going, okay, this is like too good to be true. I don't understand everything. Where did they go to get more information, maybe to apply to be one of those people you work with, but even just to dive in deeper about, okay, help me understand this because I might know somebody, right? Where would
Sure.
somebody go to find out more about y'all?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the easiest ways is at startupjunkie.org, which is where you can find out everything we do under the Startup Junkie banner. There's also the Conductor, which is based in Central Arkansas, which would be arconductor.org. That is our public-private partnership with the University of Central Arkansas. The other place, if they're more of an ecosystem builder, or they're a chamber, a person in the chamber, or they're in a municipality, and they really want to understand a template and maybe some inspiration around how to build a lasting, sustainable venture ecosystem, they can go to creatingstartupjunkies.com. And that talks about the book that Jeff Standrich and myself wrote back in 2021, which is all about the 4 pillars of building a lasting venture ecosystem around talent, capital, entrepreneurial culture, and then community engagement. We give a template on there and a venture ecosystem building canvas, and then a bunch of inspiration of just, if we can do it here in Arkansas, they can do it in some other emerging place where they might be burdened by low expectations or not typically be associated with a strong startup and small business climate. But those are the best ways to find us.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to grab those and make sure I've got those in the show notes because I want people to be able
Sure.
to access all of that, whether you're a business owner, like you said, a chamber, somebody to drive economic development in a community, in a nation, throughout the world. I agree with you. What you said early on is small businesses. That's really the backbone. It's the blood of this nation, and we need to spur it on and help more of them thrive and grow. And maybe some of them stop. Yeah, this go figure this out. This is not a good idea. That's where the thinking comes in.
For
And
sure.
because I'm really convinced that if you're an entrepreneur in heart, you're going to figure out the idea.
Right.
I have 1,000 ideas a day, right? Maybe one of them a month is good. But that's what we do as entrepreneurs. We think and we work and we ask the questions, but having the questions. So having somebody like Jeff and his team on your team, access to them, no cost. It's amazing. Links are in the show notes. Go check them out and see how they can help you grow and invest and make an impact in the world wherever you are living. So, Jeff, man, thank you for being my guest. Number one, this has been really
Thanks
fun.
for having me on. Thank you.
You're
It was
welcome.
it's good fun.
And thanks for doing what you do. I'm gonna make sure all the links are in the show notes. So, thanks for listening to Experts Speak. I hope you show up again next week. And between now and then, check out the show notes. look at Jeff, look at Startup Junkie and all the different links to see how they can help you help more people. Take care. God bless.